DND number 9, Circle of Life in Jesus' Name, Chapter 23. It's May 13th, early Monday morning, Keno Estate, Crystal Cove, California. Jason arrived at the Keno home early, before he went into Ameritech. He smiled at Cam, who opened the door for him. Cam, good morning. Morning, sir, Cam said, holding a sleeve of saltine crackers in his hand. What are you doing here so early? Jason asked. Oh, Jeffy and I have moved back in. She's not feeling well and decided she wants to be near her parents. Jason nodded. I bet Shelley and Eric are very happy about that decision. Cam smiled. They seem to be. And you? Oh, me too. You know, I love being here. It's like my home. So, have you heard from your parents, Cam? He shrugged. 2 years ago, they were on different sides of the world, my father living on his yacht and my mother living on a remote island in the Caribbean. And I'm guessing you haven't heard from them since then? That would be correct. Jason sighed. Have I told you lately how proud I am of you and what you've made of yourself? No, sir, not lately, but hey, I'm good. I think Eric's in his study. I gotta head back upstairs, he said, holding up the crackers. Jason watched him go. He'd met Cam when he was only 17. He was now 30 and one of his top agents, and definitely one of Joey's right-hand men. One of Jason's elite, which was Ameritech's version of Special Forces. Cam was physically, mentally, and spiritually at the top of his game. Jason headed to find Eric, and he knocked softly and poked his head in. Eric smiled. To what do I owe this pleasure? To me giving you an in-person report. That either means you've discovered pertinent information or you found nothing and thought seeing me in person would soften the blow. It's the latter. Eric sighed and nodded. We've reached a dead end, but we'll keep digging. Hopefully she'll try to contact you again. We'll keep a trace on your phones. We'll patrol the area where the diner is and where the Uber driver dropped her off. We've left instructions at the diner for what to do if they see her. I hope she's okay. I know. Me too. But no guilt. Eric nodded. Cam poked his head in. I'm sorry to interrupt, but Jeffy says I have to tell you this immediately. Go ahead, Eric said. You're in danger and need to have an agent go with you everywhere you go. Well, that's just great, Eric muttered. Jason nodded. They'd learned to never take Jeffy's warnings lightly. Are you on assignment? He asked Cam. Yes, sir. I'm supposed to report in 2 hours. Well, stay with Eric. I'll call Joey and get a replacement. Yes, sir. Eric? I'm going to go a step further and put a man on the cameras here. Eric nodded. Whatever makes you feel comfortable. Jason frowned. I expected an argument. What's wrong? He shook his head. I'm just tired. We just got in last night, you know. Yes, so how was it? How's Marissa? She's doing well. She's now a doctor of psychology, and she's also pregnant. Jason smiled and looked at Cam. So, you and Chris are both about to become fathers. Must be something in the water. I just heard from my wife that Keegan's wife is also pregnant, and Lisa Stewart, too. Eric smiled. I know. Good news travels fast. Jason frowned. And so does bad, so be careful, Eric. Will do. New scene. It's May 14th, the wee hours of Tuesday morning. Tanner home, Pine Forest, Georgia. Keegan placed his gun softly on the coffee table and sat down next to his son on the sofa. It was 3 a.m. Another nightmare? Gabe smiled, just couldn't sleep. Keegan glanced up at the TV screen. It was the video his abductor made, the part that hadn't been seen by the public. The surgery and the discussion afterward where Mia told her story. I'm not so sure about your choice of entertainment. Gabe shrugged. I can't seem to get this stuff out of my head. It will take time. When is your next appointment with a therapist? I'm checking out of school Wednesday morning. Keegan nodded. And how do you think that's going? It's okay. I mean, it's hard to tell, but you told me to trust the process, and so that's what I'm doing. But do you feel like it's getting better or worse? Gabe looked down because his eyes teared up. Worse. Keegan put his arm around his son. It's okay to cry, you know. When I was taken that time back in Afghanistan, I cried for weeks afterward. Really? Hell yes. And you need to talk to Jeff. After he was taken, he cried. It was so bad he couldn't even talk about it without bawling his eyes out for months. That doesn't make him any less of a man, Gabe. You know that, right? He shrugged. It doesn't make Jeff any less of a man. But what I went through wasn't as bad as what you guys faced. I don't know how you figure that. Were you in pain? Well, yes. Did you believe you were going to die? Yes. In your mind and heart, did you say goodbye to the people you love? He sniffed. Yes. Then it was the same. The difference was Jeff and I were hardened men, and you were young and innocent. It's a hell of a way to become a man. Gabe let loose, and the tears came, his shoulders shaking with the force of his sobs, and Keegan held him against his chest, hurting every bit as much as his son, maybe more. When Gabe quieted, he looked up at his father, so calm and so strong. Dad? Yes? I've thought about going into the military. Keegan swallowed. He knew this was coming. He nodded. Are you asking for my blessing in this or for my opinion? I'm not sure. I just want to discuss it. I'm always so proud of you and Master Apple and Uncle Chaz and Jake. I want to be like you. I want to be as strong and capable as you guys are. Keegan sighed. You are strong and capable, Gabe. No, I'm not. I'm potentially strong and capable. So what are you saying? Because I'm not following your train of thought. Well, I'm saying that though I want to be like you, I'm not sure if I want to go into the military. Did you think that I expected you to go into the military? Because I've tried to be very careful to allow you to decide things without me pressuring you. No, I don't feel pressure from anyone other than myself. Are we still talking about the military? Well, how would you feel if I said, I don't think I want to go that route? I would be fine with that. It's not for everyone. You wouldn't think I'm a coward? Keegan blew out a breath. He didn't expect that. Of course not. Why would you say that? Because I think I am. He was beginning to understand. Son, what you just went through would put fear in anyone's heart. You might be fearful for a while, but you, son, are no coward. You just say that because I'm your son. No, I say that because I know you, maybe better than you know yourself. Gabe sighed and filed that information away and went on to the next thing. I'm also thinking about applying to be one of Jason's elite. Keegan nodded. That would also be a commendable goal. It's a long process. You'll still have to go to school, though Jason has made a program where you can train and go to school at the same time. Gabe nodded. I know. I'm leaning that way. Well, I will support you in anything you choose. Gabe smiled. Oh, I want to join the circus. Except that. But really, Dad, I have a huge fund to manage. I could go to school for that. And Dad, the body spray endorsement thing and some of the other companies who've reached out, they're already making me some big money. Is big money your goal? No, not at all. But if I have that cushion, it could free me up to do more things. What things? Well, I would like to do something to spread the word, some kind of ministry to help kids stay close to God. And since I seem to have a lot of young people following me on social media, I was thinking I could somehow put that to good use. Well, these are all worthy goals, but it sounds like too many irons in the fire. I know. I don't know what to do first. I don't know how to prioritize it. I've miraculously been blessed with all these opportunities, and I don't know how to proceed. I'm so confused. All that and not being able to sleep. This is not optimal for your health, right? There are some of these opportunities that need to be taken advantage of right away or you'll lose them. Other things can wait, but not too long. I agree, it's confusing. I think we need to call in some professional help. I'm already doing therapy. No, I mean an agent, an attorney, or even a business manager. Things I'm not real familiar with, but we know people who are. and I think you and I need to meet with Jason and Justin, and from there get an agent or business manager. We'll discuss your goals and figure out the best course of action. Gabe nodded. That sounds good, but there was one more person I was hoping to meet with. Who's that? Grandmaster Keno. Keegan nodded. I agree. You do? Yes, he's one of my heroes. He and Ricky and Jason, and since your mind is in a precarious condition, I think Eric would be a perfect place to start. Gabe sighed in relief. I feel calmer already. Well, good. I'll make some calls. We'll arrange a trip and a few meetings. How about right after graduation? That would be great, Dad. Thank you so much. You're welcome. You think you can sleep now? Yes, sir, I think I can. Will you be playing in your game this afternoon? As far as I know, we'll be there. Thanks again. He stood and stopped. Dad, I know I say thanks a lot like it's, just habit or something, but I want you to know that I really do appreciate everything you do. You get up in the middle of the night to protect us. You take time to help me figure out my life. You do the same for my sisters. You're going the extra mile to take care of Mom and Iris right now, and along with all that, you work a full-time job. You do chores around the house. You keep the cars up, yard work. You never act tired or grumpy or angry. You are my hero. Well, thanks for the nod, son. Just trying to do what God has called me to do, and though I fail sometimes, I'll keep trying. I'm grateful. I'm so grateful for you all that I'll do whatever it takes. Now, go to bed and get some sleep. Gabe smiled. Yes, sir. New scene. It's still May 14th. It's later Tuesday morning. Tanner House, Pine Forest, Georgia. Keegan glanced at the phone before he picked up. Michael Moreland. Tanner, he said abruptly into the phone. Agent Tanner, this is Michael Moreland. Yes, I know. Did you get all your ducks in a row? Yes, sir. At least I believe I have. I'm listening. Well, first, let me apologize for how I came across the other day. I did not do all my research in my haste to be the first to call. Apology accepted. Here's a tip. Not doing your homework can get a person killed. Yes, sir. So I would be honored if I could sit down with you, face to face, and discuss some ideas. Face to face? Yes, sir. You're coming here from Portland? You know I'm from Portland? I do my homework. Yes, sir. And yes, I'll come there to meet with you. And I will hear you out. Well, thank you so much. Don't get too excited yet. No, sir. I just truly believe in what I'm doing. What you believe will be ascertained. Call my assistant at Ameritech's main number and set up an appointment. Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Keegan hung up. This should be interesting, he thought. New scene. It's the next day, May 15th, Wednesday night, Joe's Family Bar and Grill, Pine Forest, Georgia. Joe's was a pretty cool place, he thought. Not what he'd imagined at all. It was large, clean, modern, but with a country flair that gave a hint of its roots. The food was good enough, equal to any sports bar he'd ever been to. The wait staff was friendly and efficient. He sat at the bar, but it was hard to miss the pretty waitresses and the good-looking young men who manned the place. The joint was jumping. There were a lot more people here than he thought this little town could provide. He found that very interesting. Can I get you anything? The older guy tending bar asked. He looked for a name tag but didn't see one. No, I'm good, thanks. Have you worked here long? The man arched a brow. A pretty good amount of time. Why? Well, you don't have a name tag and everyone else does, he said as he gestured around. So I guessed you're either new or have been here a long time. The man smiled. Well, most people know who I am, and I only come in at night when we're short on staff. Oh, well then I'm going to venture another guess and say that you're Joe. He smiled and nodded. That'd be right. Joe Carter. He held out his hand. Mike Moreland. He stood slightly and shook Joe's hand. I owned this place, going on 40 years. Of course, it was a lot smaller back then. Really? Yep. About a third of the size as it is now. Once my daughter came back and opened the inn, we can barely keep up with all the progress. Well, I'm staying at one of the cottages at the inn. So your daughter is Jody? No, Jody is my daughter's business partner. My daughter is Lisa Stewart. Excuse me. Joe turned away. While Joe went to take care of a couple who just sat down at the bar, Mike glanced around and immediately noticed the girl who came in the door. One of the most beautiful girls he'd ever seen, and he'd seen a lot. And she was alone. She had light blonde hair and big blue eyes and a gorgeous smile. She wore tight jeans and a casual light blue shirt with the placket unbuttoned. She glanced in his direction and then waved. "Hey, Joe," she called, her voice deep and sweet. Joe waved. "Hey, Rosie Posey, where's Violet?" "She had a date, so I'm on my own tonight." She glanced at him again and smiled, and he almost fell off his stool. "Hello," she said with a nod as she passed. He smiled and nodded. She headed straight to the pool tables on the far side. He watched her as she strode up to an empty table, grabbed a rack, fished balls out of the pocket and tossed them into the triangle, and then she went about rearranging them and pushed the rack in place and lifted it. He watched her grab a stick, chalk it up, and break. She was remarkable. Her blonde hair was stick straight, thick, parted on the side and came to her shoulders. Her face was a perfect oval, her nose turned up slightly, her lips luscious with just the hint of a smirk on them. He thought about joining her, but that would mess up his plans and possibly get him killed. He'd done his homework, as he'd been advised to do by this girl's father, who was Special Forces, ex-FBI, head of Southeastern Branch of Ameritech, the father of 7, and lethal. His only son was the one and only, highly sought-after Gabriel Tanner, and his daughters would become the same if Mike had any luck in getting through to them. Still, if he were to approach Rose before he had his meeting with her father, she would surely tell him. And then Agent Tanner would assume that he'd gone over his head and straight to the girl, and that was definitely not going to work. This family was close, and the children had an enormous amount of respect for their father. So he would keep his distance and wait to be formally introduced to her and her sisters. He stayed at the bar watching her, totally intrigued by her. He watched as she was approached by a young man. They clasped hands as if they knew each other. They flirted. One of them challenged the other to a game. They ordered drinks. They played for almost an hour. Finally, Rose glanced at her phone and walked to the bar. "Kurt lost, so he'll pay for the drinks. Tell Miss Shirley I said hey." "Will do," Joe replied. She smiled at him again as she went by. Once she was gone, he realized he also needed to get going. He had an early meeting at Meritech. Silly that he had to drive 30 minutes to get there when the man lived right next to the inn, which Mike didn't know until he got to town. He'd asked a lady at the convenience store just inside the city limits if she knew where the famous Tanner family lived. She was full of information. Mike quickly surmised that what they say about small towns is correct, and it doesn't matter how big of a security organization you run, you can't beat the small town information line. He also surmised that Agent Tanner probably didn't think that Mike would get a room at the inn, and it actually was a fluke. The first time he tried, they were booked solid for weeks, but he left his name in case there was a cancellation, and sure enough, a guest got sick and canceled. If he hadn't been able to stay at the inn, he'd been in a motel up on the highway, much closer to Ameritech. He left the bar and made his way toward his car. It was then he noticed Rose, bent over her car with the hood up. He walked slowly toward her, and when he was about 6 feet from her and about to speak, she whirled on him, drawing a gun from her hip and pointing it straight at him. He jumped back, throwing his hands in the air. "Back off, Bud," she commanded. Wait, don't shoot. I was just going to see if you needed help. That's all, I swear." She looked him over and raised her chin. "Back up about 3 feet." He stepped back. He couldn't keep his hands from shaking, and she smiled. "You're not from around here, are you?" He shook his head. "No, I'm visiting. I'm staying at the Pine Forest Country Inn. You can call them. They'll vouch for me." All alone?" "Yes. Most people come with someone to enjoy the inn and the countryside. Why are you here all alone?" "I'm here on business. I have a meeting with your father in the morning." She looked him over again. "How do you know who my father is?" "I spoke with him on the phone, and when you walked into the bar, I recognized you from the picture I saw online." Her eyes narrowed. "Are you Michael Moreland?" He nodded. "So your father has told you about me?" "Of course." May I put my hands down now? She nodded permission, pointed her gun up and then down, and shoved it into the holster inside her jeans. Sorry, but you should know better than to approach a woman you don't know at night. You want to help? You stand back and speak before you approach. I guess I should know I'm not in Kansas anymore. You're from Kansas? No, I'm from Portland. And in Portland, you can't carry a loaded firearm in public places, including in your car. Rose laughed. Well, isn't that silly? A gun doesn't do you a bit of good if it isn't loaded. So, you had a loaded gun pointed at my chest. She grinned. Loaded, chambered, and aimed straight at your heart. Chambered? What's that? She only shook her head. Don't worry, I didn't have my finger on the trigger. Good grief, the gun could have gone off, he said, showing a bit of temper. She snickered. That's highly unlikely. Unlikely? Highly. And don't talk to me about guns if you don't know anything about them. I know they kill people. People kill people. He sighed. You're right about that, he conceded. Look, sorry if I scared you. Our family has had some trouble lately, so we're a little nervous about when approached by a stranger. He nodded. I know about your family's trouble. She laughed. Yeah, I guess everyone does, huh? He agreed. He smiled in agreement. So, do you know what's wrong with your car? I already took care of it, she said as she let the hood drop closed. She moved around and climbed behind the wheel and started up the engine of the bright red Ford Edge, lowered the window, and smiled at him. Well, enjoy your stay here in beautiful Pine Forest, Georgia, she said with an exaggerated Southern accent. He smiled. I intend to. Rose pulled away and headed home. Call Dad, she said. Hello, Rosie Posey, he answered with a chuckle. She laughed. Joe is awesome, isn't he? Yeah, he is. So how'd I do? You two were awesome, my little flower. I know, right? I should go into show business. I believe that is exactly what we're contemplating. Well, he didn't try to talk to me, so are you satisfied that he has good intentions? Not quite yet. He's kind of cute, she said, thinking of the Zac Efron-looking dude. You say that about most every guy you meet. Oh, it's like a box of chocolates. They all look so good, she laughed. And it's what's inside that counts, Keegan countered. Well, I guess I'll have to find out what's inside, but don't worry, he already has 2 strikes. Really? What are they? Strike 1, he's pretty citified, and strike 2, he's scared of guns. Well, honey, to be fair, a healthy fear of guns is a good thing. See, Dad, that's why I love you. You could have let me go with strike 2, and you'd just be 1 strike away from ousting him from my mind. But then you go and be honest. You are the coolest dad in the world. Yeah. Are you on your way home? I'm driving up as we speak, but I know that you know that. Good girl. See you inside. Keegan ended the call and then called John at the end. What's up, Keeg? Well, first, I just wanted to say thanks for letting me know that Mr. Moreland checked in. Yeah, well, I'll never forget that name or that time in my life. The synchronicity was too much to ignore. Me neither. We put him to the test, and he passed, so far. He ran into Rose at Joe's and did not approach until he thought she had car trouble. Well, good for him. Do me a favor, and don't notify him that Chaz is running his cattle down the road tomorrow morning. There's already a notice on his door. Hold on. Jake! Yes, sir? Do me a favor and run to Cottage 3 and take the notice off the door and hurry before he gets back. Jake frowned but didn't argue. Yes, sir. Okay, consider it taken care of, John said to Keegan. Thanks. Keegan, do you think this is a little bit cruel? I'm not trying to be unkind. I just want to see what he does under adverse situations. He should call me and explain to me that he'll be late because of the cattle. He should then offer to see me nearby, and we'll see what he says. Poor kid. He should never have tried to strong-arm you. Well, he's young. He'll learn. New scene. It's May 16th, Thursday morning, Pine Forest Country Inn, Pine Forest, Georgia. Michael Moreland took one last look in the mirror, drew a deep breath, and practiced his disarming smile. Agent Tanner, it's nice to finally meet you. He shook his head. Hello, Agent Tanner. It's good to meet you, sir. He shook his head. He felt way over his head, and it was the first time since maybe he was 6 years old. What was his problem? He'd always been in control of every situation. He was smart. He naturally found his way around to charm pretty much everyone, be it real or faked. And if he couldn't charm them, he could usually be firm enough and confident enough to get them to do exactly what he wanted. That's why at the age of 24, he was running his own advertising company, Viral Media. He was tenacious. He didn't stop until he succeeded, and he was so sure of himself that he didn't get paid until he produced results. He could help anyone, companies, artists, personalities, comics, authors, even high school athletes who needed hype for college scholarships. He was intuitively smart when it came to the media. Maybe it was because he pretty much spent all his time online since he was a kid. He was an only child of a single parent. His mother worked 2 jobs to keep a roof over their heads and food on the table. And by the time he was 13, he'd learned he could make a buck online, helping others to navigate the complexities of media. It was second nature to him. So, why was he having so much trouble handling this man, this Agent Tanner? Time to go. He grabbed his keys, wallet, phone, bag, and headed out. In his rental and at the gate, he looked up and wondered, what was this? The wrought iron gate to the road was closed. He got out of his car and went to the gate to see if he could open it himself, but it was electronic. There was a sign that said something about a cattle crossing. A cattle crossing? Gotta be kidding me, he grumbled. He peered down the road but didn't see anything. He drove back to the front of the inn and went inside. Jody smiled at him. "Can I help you, Mr. Moreland?" He pointed toward the gate. "The gate says it's closed to a cattle crossing." "Yes, sir." "A cattle crossing?" She smiled. "Yes, sir. That cattle crossing has happened every year, at least twice a year, for 100 years. The Stewart Ranch runs their cattle down that road from their winter pastures to the spring pastures every spring. If you'd like to watch, we have an upper balcony to get a better view." She sweetly motioned up the stairs. "No, I don't care to watch. I have an important appointment. Could you not have warned me?" "Oh, dear, Mr. Moreland, you weren't home last night, and we put a notice on your door." "Well, there was no notice on my door." "I am so sorry. I have no idea what could have happened." She bit her lip. She didn't like to lie. "Is there another way off the property?" he asked. "You can walk off the property, but if you want to drive, there's only through that gate and down that dirt road. It's part of the charm of our inn." He frowned. He wasn't finding it very charming. "It will only delay you about 45 minutes to an hour." 5 minutes late is too late. He blew out a frustrated breath and nodded at the woman, went back to his car to do the only thing he could do. He picked up his phone and made the call. "Tanner." "Agent Tanner, this is Michael Moreland." "Yes, I know." "I have a little problem. Can we reschedule our appointment?" "What's the problem?" "I'm staying at the Pine Forest Country Inn, and there is a cattle crossing event thing going on, and I can't get out of the gate." "Ah, yes, it is that time of year." "Yes, sir, and so I'm sure you know that I can't get out of the gate, since you live next door and are experiencing the same dilemma." "Unless I left my house earlier," Keegan countered. Mike was silent. "Yes, sir. Well, apparently the notice they left on my door must have blown away, and I didn't know about this amazing event, and therefore I can't make our meeting. Would it be possible to reschedule?" "I think we can do that." Mike blew out a relieved breath. "What time would be good for you, sir?" "Tell you what, I'll meet you at the inn in about 10 minutes. "At the inn? So you're not already at your office?" "You seem like an intelligent young man, so I'm going to assume that that's a rhetorical question." Mike sighed. "Yes, I guess it is." "See you soon." "Thank you, sir." Mike pulled his car into a parking space and got out. He could hear the lowing of a cow or steer or whatever one calls cattle. He looked toward the gate, and farther down the road, he could see some dust and heard some yells, sounds, and whistles, and yelling, and a thundering sound which he assumed was the hooves of the cattle or possibly horses, and there was definitely a smell in the air of earth and sweat and grass and dirt. One cow came trotting by, and then another, and soon the roadway was completely filled with cattle. He stood watching, his mouth agape. It actually was quite a spectacle to see in person. He walked toward the gate and peered to his left down the road. It seemed to go on forever. There were a few cowboys on horses on either side, yelling and whistling and swinging a rope in the air. Pretty interesting, huh? Mike turned to the voice and looked up at Agent Tanner. His appearance was formidable. He was about 3 inches taller than Mike. Muscular, dark hair, dark eyes, chiseled jaw. He looked as lethal as he was. He was in his late 40s but had no paunch and looked like he was in his 20s, and Mike could see where Gabe got his looks, only Gabe had blue eyes, like his sister's. He nodded at the question. Yes, sir, pretty interesting. I've never seen anything like this except on TV. It's different in person. He offered his hand. It's nice to meet you, sir. Keegan shook his hand. That remains to be seen. He gestured toward the gate. Did you want to finish watching, or shall we head in? Mike nodded. Let's go in. They went inside and were met by a young man with dark hair and broad shoulders. Hey, Mr. Tanner. Dad says to take his office. He won't need it for a while. Thanks, Jake. Jake nodded at Mike. Mr. Moreland, hope you're enjoying your stay. Mike nodded and followed Keegan into the office. That's another nice-looking guy, Mike said, gesturing back toward Jake. Keegan nodded, a puzzled look on his face. Oh, I'm always looking for new talent. Keegan chuckled. Well, that new talent is a Marine on leave in his special forces, and I wouldn't mess with him if I were you. I'll make a note of that, he said, pointing to his head. You do that. Keegan sat down behind the desk and motioned for Mike to sit in the chair in front of the desk. I noticed Jake called you Mr. Tanner. Would you prefer that? Jake called me Mr. Tanner as a show of respect in front of you. He usually calls me Uncle Keegan, since I've known him since he was a toddler. And now that he's a fellow Marine, he can call me anything he likes. As for you, I'm interested. What would you prefer to call me? Mike smiled. Well, at this point in time, I wish I could call you Uncle Keegan, if that would mean I'm in your good graces. For now, though, I guess I'll just stick with Agent Tanner. Keegan smiled and nodded. Well said. He gestured toward Mike. So make your pitch. Mike drew a breath, and Keegan Tanner didn't mess around. Agent Tanner, I'm going to level with you. I would normally first pitch the company I'm representing, tell you all about them, get you on their side, hoping to have you wanting to do what you can to help them succeed. But you, sir, have thrown me off my game. You are not like anyone I've ever dealt with, and I'm smart enough to realize that you know that. Keegan nodded. So that also means you're smart enough to realize that you can try to stroke my ego when it won't work. Mike sighed. See? That's what I mean. You throw me time and time again. Look, I'll just shoot straight. I represent this company, Twin Wave Beauty. They produce skin creams, all natural cosmetics and makeups, deodorants, shampoos, conditioners. They are a small company and find it hard to compete with the big guys. The two women who started the company were looking for products that achieve the same result as the big guys, but without the harmful chemicals and dyes, like the big guys. That's not a new concept. No, sir, but there are a lot of them who claim to be all natural, but they aren't, or they aren't totally natural. They don't have the integrity of Twin Wave, and integrity is what makes Twin Wave stand out. They are not willing to sell their souls for a buck. They truly want to offer a quality product and make a reasonable profit. So this Twin Wave company is all about integrity. What are you all about, and why do you want to help this company? Well, I've been helping people to grow their brand and therefore grow their income using social media and their online presence since I was in middle school. For a time, I was all about the money. My mom worked 2 jobs to try to support us, and I was determined to help her, but I quickly learned that the entire system was based on dishonesty or trickery. I made a decision to go the road less traveled and be totally and completely honest, and it worked. Funny thing, people find honesty and integrity intriguing. I became a force to reckon with. Every company I've ever dealt with has made big-time strides, doubled, and in some cases even tripled their profits. I've done well. My mother now only works 1 job, and I was able to buy her a real home and a good car and some furniture. And your father? My father is a vague memory. If I hadn't seen pictures of him, I wouldn't remember him at all. He wanted nothing to do with me or my mother. I think he was into dealing. I'm not sure. I don't care. Look, I don't usually discuss my personal life with anyone. Bottom line, I want to put Twin Wave Beauty on the national map. And when I saw your twin daughters, I just knew they were the answer, especially when your son has become a giant celebrity. As soon as it's known that they're Gabriel Tanner's sisters, their word would be gold. Well, my son is not a celebrity. He's just a kid. Well, at the risk of alienating you again, sir, I have to disagree. Your son is the hottest thing there is right now. He's everything this country needed. His looks, his honesty, his talents, his toughness, his realness, even his innocence. He really is the ultimate male. Your son has more sway over a giant portion of the country's employable youth than you may know. He is powerful. You have to believe me. Keegan didn't like it, but he knew it was the truth. He nodded. Okay, so what are you suggesting? Well, if your daughters are amenable, if they like Twin Wave products and would speak for them honestly, they would be seen on every social media outlet. They would be extremely popular. I'm sure you, as their father, realize that they are not just another pretty face. Your daughters have a uniqueness. Because they're twins? That and because their beauty is exceptional. They are breathtaking. The moment I saw them, I was blown away. And I've seen a lot of pretty girls. Most of them want me to make them a star. And are you capable of doing that? I am. But I have to believe in what I'm doing. For example, you've probably heard of Andre Ukoma. I knew him personally. I knew how talented he was on the football field because he was a friend of mine, but his coach had problems with him and he was getting no playing time, and I hated to see the injustice of that talent going to waste, so I made a few highlight videos. I placed them strategically on social media, and next thing I know, the coach is playing him more. And then I was able to make more highlight videos, and he ends up having college scouts come look at him, and he gets a full ride to Oregon, and now he's playing pro ball and touted as Rookie of the Year last year. Not bad work, Keegan said. Thank you, sir. So is that what you want for your girls, to be stars? No. I asked that just out of curiosity. I have close friends who are what you call stars, and if I wanted, I could simply ask them to give me an in. That's not what I want, and I don't think it's what interests my daughters. Yes, sir, I saw that your family is close friends with the Kenos, and that's what makes me so interested in your family. You're not seeking after fame and fortune. You seem to be much more grounded. What grounds us is our faith. He nodded but said nothing because he knew nothing about religion. We don't seek after fame or money or power. We seek to do good in this world, to right wrongs, to protect the innocent, and to teach as many as we can about God and His Son, Jesus Christ, and we do that through example. So if my girls were to agree to be spokespersons for your client, it would have to be done with complete integrity. That means if the product doesn't do what it's supposed to do, they won't represent it. That means that if you choose to do a little commercial, it will not be promiscuous in any way. They won't wear revealing clothing. They won't perform intimate acts. Mike nodded. Completely understood, sir. None of those things you see employed by mainstream would be necessary, because just an innocent shot of your daughter putting a drop of moisturizer on her face would drive men wild. Their innocence is what men crave. Keegan's brow rose. Mike realized his mistake and tried to backtrack. Okay, you have to know how beautiful your daughters are, and you have to know what effect they have on men. I know all too well. So I'm not going to pretend that they're not sexy, but as I'm sure you know, sex sells. You want honesty? There it is. Why else would a beautiful girl be needed to sell beauty products? Because everyone wants to be as pretty as that girl on the screen. And my daughters are naturally beautiful, and you want to claim that your client's products made them beautiful? You do see the dishonesty in that. Yes, sir, I do, but that won't be the claim. The only claim would be that these girls, these young ladies, use these products for the reasons they would state. They're real reasons, and that is all it would take. Which means they would have to use the products. Well, yes, of course. Look, They may try them and not like them, and that would be the end of that. But I'd simply like the opportunity to give it a try. Truly, that's all I'm asking. Well, maybe once you meet my daughters, you'll change your mind. Maybe in person, they're not what you think. Sir, I saw your daughter Rose at Joe's last night. I practically fell off my seat when she walked in. She is, take your breath away, beautiful. She was more than I expected. You spoke to her? Well, not really. I didn't want to approach her without speaking with you first, but I ended up speaking to her because she had some car trouble. Keegan nodded and then smiled. No, she didn't. She did. I approached her and she almost blew me away. No, she didn't have car trouble. It was a test, one you passed, and she didn't almost blow you away. Either she blows you away or she doesn't. There is no almost. He looked down and then back up. A test? Yes, please understand. I have to be able to trust you when you're talking about my daughters. When we're talking about my daughters. This morning was also a test. Your notice of the cattle drive didn't blow away. Well, how did you know I was even staying at the inn? Small town information grapevine? No. The co-owner of the inn, John Apple, served with me in Iraq and Afghanistan. Not much gets past him. Besides that, I heard you tell Rose last night where you were staying when you thought she was about to, he paused and used finger quotes, blow you away. She told you that? I heard that. Catch up. He slowly nodded his head. Wow. Keegan smiled and gave him a moment. If you feel a little out of your league, I understand. And if you want to back out, I also understand. No, sir. I do not want to back out. I admit I'm out of my league, but I'll learn as I go. And I'm a fast learner. I believe you. Let's set up a meeting with the girls. And that is the end of chapter 23.